And we're live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Global Ed Student Chat. I'd like to welcome everyone on panel and to all of you joining from around the globe. Today, we will be discussing building and keeping virtual relationships. Just to give an overview of what Global Ed Student Chat is all about, this is a student-led Twitter chat connecting K-12 students around the world to discuss topics and questions related to character education, social justice, and citizenship. Global Ed Student Chat creates opportunities for students to network with others, gain perspectives, build relationships with new learning partners in a literacy-rich environment, experience social media as a powerful platform for learning, and establish a positive digital footprint. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to hand things over to our wonderful student leader, Ethan, who's going to talk about some of the tech.
So if you're watching us on YouTube, you can sign in with a Google account and you can use the chat to comment or ask a question. And if you have a Twitter, you can follow the hashtag #GlobalEdStudentChat to read the ideas, thoughts, questions shared by others. And we'll use a question-answer format, and you can use the hashtag to add to your thinking and get involved with the conversation. Feel free to share your first name and where in the world you're joining us from today.
And next up, Anna Heat, we have introducing our guest expert for this month.
Today we have with us Sheila Glazoff. Sheila Glazoff is an Yellow Brain award-winning professional speaker, Green Brain internationally known author, Orange Brain engaging personality expert, and Blue Brain passionate expert. Her innovative style has won Sheila praise for her What Color is Your Brain programs around the world, encouraging adults and children to recognize and respect the best in themselves and others is the essence of her programs and books. Sheila donates 10% of the royalties from the sale of her books to the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. Sheila has first-hand knowledge and experience with the numerous challenges diabetes creates. Her eldest son, Joshua, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 32 years ago when he was 15 years old. Her father had type 2 diabetes, and their family cat had type 1 diabetes. Sheila has appeared on CNN, NBC, ABC, Fox, Lifetime, and WGN-TV, and she has been interviewed on internet programs and radio stations throughout the United States and in Brazil. Today's Chicago Woman newspaper selected Sheila as one of the 100 women making a difference. Today, please join me in welcoming Sheila Glazoff as our expert on panel for the Global Education Student Chat.
Thank you.
Wow, we are so lucky to have you here, Sheila. Thank you so much for joining. And next we have Garvey that's going to take us through some of the norms of how this Tweet and Talk will run.
Okay, so first we will have approximately 30 minutes to discuss 3 questions. Please be mindful that this chat is open to students in K through 12. Active participation from all classes is how we learn. All comments made during the chat should be positive and productive. We welcome diverse opinions. You may not agree with something someone has said, but we ask that when challenging an idea, you respectfully disagree with the idea, but not the individual person. Please be respectful. Being respectful online includes using language that is inclusive and culturally appropriate.
Thank you so much, Garvey. I think we are on schedule to jump right into the conversation here. We have Sam, if you'd like to kick us off. And I'd also add that on the YouTube channel, we have Olivia and Mrs. Poncio joining from Texas, and they have some members of the CISD SWAT team, student tech team, tweeting in some answers there, and Jen Giffen joining in from Ontario. Thank you so much to those tuning in on YouTube and chiming in on the Twitter chat. Let's get started, Sam.
I just want to mention that we do not do introductions, so I'll start with that. I'm Sam. I go to LDS Bristol. I'm in grade 10, and I've been with the chat since the beginning. Someone else wants to introduce themselves. I should probably go through and do that.
I can. Hi, I'm Garvey. I'm in 7th grade and I live in Maryland. And yeah.
I'm Ethan. I'm a junior in high school, and I live in Garden City, Kansas.
And we have a few of our teacher leaders here. Right? I'll go. I'm Mike Drezik. I am from Lakeshore CSD. I'm a tech integrator here, and a proud member of the Global Ed Student Chat team. And Jen.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Casa-Todd. I'm a teacher librarian in Aurora, Canada. I am an author and I am one of the co-founders of the Global Ed Student Chat, a powerful platform for amplifying student voice. And Anahit.
I am also a student from Aurora, Canada. I've been with the Global Education Student Chat. This is my 2nd year. I'm so excited to get the conversation started today.
And I'm Sheila Glazov, and I'm honored to be your guest speaker, and I live outside of Chicago.
All right, let's jump into our first question. How have your relationships with others changed as a result of the pandemic? What have you learned from those?
So I'll start off with this question. And, during the pandemic, the big realization I've come to is that a lot of the friends I had are, just school friends, and we don't really connect outside of school. And I think it's important for us students to kind of distinguish the difference between having school friends and life friends. And that's completely okay if you don't connect with everyone at school. You just have your group. Another thing is when everyone was home and people were still not reaching out to you, finding out how you were. That was kind of a red flag because everyone was kind of not busy, not doing anything. So I just want to mention that those who care about you will reach out to you under any circumstance. So that's really what I've taken away from relationships and my relationships with people in the past, 8, 9 months.
So for me, I'm a dancer, and our studio was closed for a while, and so not only did I have like school was all online and virtual, but then I couldn't go to dance, which is where most of my like main friends are that I see in person, and so that was pretty horrible. For me at least. And then once I was able to go back to dance and I could see these people in person, like it definitely. I know it's strange, but I definitely feel like we grew closer over like being far away. If that makes sense. Just because like we saw people virtually, but then once we were all together, it was really nice. So yeah.
For me, it's similar to Ethan. Like I used to play lacrosse, and like my whole like week was filled with that. And now that's virtual. Like a lot of my teammates, like we moved to a chat so we can talk to each other. And so like it's kind of weird because actually instead of growing apart, we grew a little bit further from each other because a lot of us left the team and stuff like that because of coronavirus. But I also agree with Anahit because she made a really good point that if someone hasn't checked on you, that doesn't mean that. I mean, since there's like Anahit said, like if they haven't talked to you or checked on you, then they're probably not your friend because nobody has really had. Nobody has not. Wait, there's not really much to do. So I feel like I agree. Like that's also what I've learned, and I've let a lot of people go because it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of that we touched, some of you touched on that. You're kind of realizing who your true friends are because they're asking like, "Oh, how have you been?" All of that. For me, I find I don't really have a big group of people I stick with at lunch or at school in general. I kind of have my small group of people that I like to stick with and I like to hang out with, and a couple others. And I found that I've stuck with them throughout. And those kind of in-person relationships have turned into more of, yeah, we're texting now more, and like we've got group chats. So it's different, but we've managed.
Thanks, Sam. And a student from Miss Giffin's class is sharing something similar in that the person said they're closer to people they live with because we've had to be in the same house for such a long time. I know that's true in my family. I don't know if that's true for anyone else, but thank you for sharing that, a student in Miss Giffin's class. And Sheila, perhaps now is a good time to pull together what the kids have said using your framework on that first question.
Thanks, Sam. So listening to all of you and looking at the chart I sent you and the situations, we'll start with the yellow people. And the yellow people are the people who usually have a plan of how they're going to talk to somebody every day, and they will schedule their time to talk to people. You have the blue people who will call just because they want to stay in touch. They just want to know how you are. They aren't looking to see if it's reciprocal or not. They don't keep score. They just need to know how everybody is and talk to other people. The green people usually do have a small group of friends. And so for them, having a large group that they're not in touch with really doesn't bother them. They're okay staying home, like our grandson, one of our grandsons. He's really happy staying home by himself and doing school virtually. It's the orange people I think are having the hardest time because, and 70 to 75% of our children are orange. And it's really hard because there are rules now. You must wear a mask. You can't go to school. You can't go to ballet. You can't go and play the sports you like. So that's harder on the orange people who like to do things spontaneously. So, and then again, we talked about you being a rainbow and being a blending of all those colors, depending on your circumstances and where you're living and what grade you are in school, that can also make a difference.
That is certainly true for me and my orange brain. Thank you. Sam, do you want to bring us to question number 2? Thank you, Sheila. Actually, before we do that, does anybody want to reflect on that question from that perspective before we move on?
I can add on to that. When reading about the colors, I found myself to be blue and green. And reflecting on what Sheila said, I reach out to a lot of people, but then there's also, I have a really small group of friends. So the people that I do reach out to are within my small group of friends. And I always think, it's better to have $1 than 100 pennies. So that's kind of my line of thinking. And I think that's the green in me speaking.
Yes.
So I can definitely relate to that.
It's your green logic. It makes sense.
Actually, it makes $1 because you'd rather have $1 than 100.
I'm excited to see how you interpret this. That's what's so fascinating. Everybody standing on a different corner and interpreting differently depending on their brain color and the situation they're in.
All right, I'm going to bring us over to question 2. Oh,
actually, why don't we just talk about what Dennis in Miss Giffin's class said. I got closer to this guy on my trampoline team, and he's a lot better than me, and he makes me a better athlete because I'm training with him more than I would have myself, which is really fascinating. So I guess the training has been virtual. So thank you, Dennis. And we have Tisha, who is, her class is saying, when in quarantine during the spring, we were able to meet all together for the first time ever. And now we are split up again in multiple classes and have had to readjust because of masks and social distancing, which does make it problematic, doesn't it? Thank you for sharing that, our SWAT team friends. Okay, Sam, let's go to question 2.
All right, so question 2 for today is, what are some of the advantages and challenges of virtual relationships?
I could go. I think some of the advantages are like some kids don't like seeing each other face to face, so I feel like that's an advantage for them. But there's also some barriers, like you can't have play dates or go to birthday parties anymore, and you can't do sports anymore and stuff like that. So I feel like virtual relationships for different people, it's different. But I know from my point of view, it's both because I really like seeing my friends in person, but at the same time, I don't like going to school in person. So yeah, I guess that's the same for a lot of people.
Yeah, so adding on to what Garvey said, I think Gen Z especially has adapted to communicating online. That's how we communicate. And one of my friends, told me something very interesting that made me view communication in a different light. And she said that when you are texting or messaging someone, you have time to think about what you want to say. So in some circumstances, your conversations via messaging becomes more deep because you have time to think about what to say. You have time to think about jokes you want to say. And that is really what brings value to that relationship. Because in person, you might not be able to really think about the topic and then respond, but I think that's the advantage of social media. You can also send your friends, articles, movies that you enjoy, and sharing that, you become closer as well.
Yeah, I'd like to expand on that. Yeah, it is a lot easier to share thoughts and opinions online or different articles to help back up those thoughts and opinions. It makes it for a lot like a more interesting like conversation between two people because it's pretty hard to like pull up your phone or pull out your tablet and say like, hey, look at this, like to back up something. It is a lot easier to do things like that.
I love hearing you be so green and thinking, as it says in the green quadrant, thinking about what you're going to say and also sharing information. So you have that blue that you want to share, but of course it's that information of giving forth information to other people. So it's when you listen to what people say, they will tell you their brain colors, as you both just did. You told me very much about who you are. And I think it's a wonderful idea that it gives people the opportunity to think before they speak, which is a very good lesson to learn.
There's an interesting comment in the chat too from I think it was Christine that talks about travel time and arranging virtual meets, but also like the limitation in terms of access that some people might not even be able to engage in this conversation because they don't have that internet connection. So that's a conversation for a whole nother chat in terms of access, but balancing the need to be near people and then the restrictions and all of that. So thank you for adding that into the YouTube chat there.
We also have Ms. Poncio's class talking about connecting and meeting people anywhere in the world, which is also echoed by Linda Edwards, outside of school hours. And really interesting, Kyle, thank you for sharing this idea that introverts aren't so stressed, that they could take their time and respond to others without feeling the pressure of that social element that sometimes can be problematic. Ms. Poncio really loved the point, Anahit, that you made about being more thoughtful with our messaging. And Christine in Ms. Giffin's class says, oh, you've already said that. I'll stop there. And last point here, Tisha, Ms. Poncio's class, Olivia feels that her team was more productive in virtual space and their work was of better quality. And that is fascinating, right? Because you think of someone attending school in their pajamas, sleeping in and playing video games and not really focusing. And yet that's not necessarily the case. So thank you for the conversation in the chat.
Yeah, I'd like to just add on to that real quick. It's a lot easier to poke and prod at your friends through text, say, hey, get this done. We need this done. Come on, let's do this project now, than it is to come up to them face to face and say, hey, have you done that yet? Can you do this for me? So that's a very interesting point.
Thanks, Sam.
Sam, does it make you more comfortable then than doing it face to face, that interaction, being able to do it online?
I'm the type of person that would say like, hey, buddy, pick up the slack here. You have to do your part. Because I'm not the kind of person who's just going to go and do all the work and then have my friends or people I'm working with not get the marks that they may deserve, that they're just too lazy to go and do it and get those marks.
Great yellow brain answer.
All right, let's go into question 3. What advice would you give to other students about how to build and keep relationships online?
I can start this one off. It's definitely just a thing of don't drop off the face of the earth, pretty much. Like, right now we live in such like a digital age that there's so many ways to get in contact with like either one person or a whole group of people, and there's so many chances to keep relationships and build relationships that it's just like, it may be a struggle, yes, because like we're still learning how to use these things, but yeah.
I think it's just a matter of checking up on your friends, as Anahit said in like the beginning. Make sure that you like ask them if they're okay every day, because otherwise they're gonna think that you don't want to talk to them anymore and you don't want to be their friend anymore. So, like, a thing you could do is, even if it just doesn't even take a minute, you could just text them, hey, how are you? And like Ethan said, there's so many ways to connect. Like, yeah.
I think that the good things that this pandemic has brought is new opportunities. A couple weeks ago at my school, we had a workshop about networking, and a former alum, he was talking about how networking on social media has really brought him a lot of opportunities. And you can connect with people that you don't know, but your common interests that are displayed on social media, that can be what connects you, and that can be, what helps you later in life.
That was a perfect comment, because that's how I met Mrs. Cassell with her digital human library. And one thing led to another, of getting to do the brain colors and then doing the brain colors story for the children at her school. And then the wonderful book that she and Jen have just finished publishing, and now being able to join your wonderful chat. So it can start with something very small and grow into something that's so lovely and so much bigger that it expands your life. And it expands into something that you never even expect. You just enjoy the moment, and then things just organically grow into wonderful opportunities. So that uses all your brain colors to do that.
And certainly I can say that there are many people that I've met online first that have now become really dear friends. And so the pandemic is no different than what our relationship has been all along, right? We hardly ever see each other in person. It's been through technology that we continue to talk to each other on Voxer, on Twitter chats, etc. I want to bring in, so Miss Giffen has a student who is talking about how being in person is actually preferable because it's easier to reach out to teachers when he faces a problem. And sometimes, they're waiting. I'll put that in there. He can't continue the assignment without their response. So it is harder to work at home. So that's a really, really good point that we need to be mindful of sometimes, especially if we're talking about a disconnect. I know even time zones are sometimes a problem if you're trying to connect with loved ones. Christine shares, I tell them about most anything that happens. If they don't care, they can ignore it. But otherwise, it's a good way to start a conversation and keep people from drifting apart. So thank you for that. And we have Miss Poncio, who shares exactly that our best connections have been made online because that's where we met first as well. So yes, absolutely. All right. And I'm not sure if there's anything on Twitter. Did you want to, did anyone not answer that question who wants to answer that question?
Yeah, I'll just pop on. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I'm having a conversation with somebody online and then they just stop. So it's as simple as saying "got to go" or G to G. Like it's that simple. You don't necessarily need to give a reason. It's just because sometimes you're waiting for that response. You're waiting, then you realize they're not here anymore. They're gone. They're off doing something else. So yeah, that's one of my biggest pet peeves and one of my biggest pieces of advice. Just say, "Hey, I gotta go. Something came up," or "Hey, I gotta go do this." Yada yada.
I gotta say that I'm gonna have to take that advice to heart because I think I may be guilty of that with a 4 and a 7-year-old around the house where I could be in the middle of something and then I get called away. So thank you for letting me reflect on that one there. But we also have a comment on Twitter from the CHS SWAT team. One of the ways that they build relationships during quarantine was gameplay, Jackbox, Flipgrid, pet shows. Sometimes the best connections were in a planned lesson. So I really like that, just that spontaneity. And I'm sure there's a connection to one of the brain colors on that one, right?
That is very orange. You were being very orange, and Sam was being very yellow. Because for Sam, he was saying that is so rude. And I agree with you, Sam. I have people that I work with, colleagues or people I'm trying to get in touch with, and they just never respond. So when someone responds, you say, "Oh, that's so refreshing that they respond," because my generation is you did those type of things. You even wrote thank you notes, which people can now do by texting. But the orange spontaneity is really different, and people just sometimes have to learn, that to respect other people's brain colors, that it might be fine just to not pay attention and just be gone and not say anything. That might be okay for an orange person because you're on to something else. But for a yellow person, they'd like you to be polite and say, "I'm leaving. Thank you very much. Goodbye." And a blue person might have their feelings hurt. And a green person, they're really not into the conversation as much. So that's really okay for them sometimes not to be in that conversation. Sometimes they just like to be the voyeur and just watch and just listen and not have to say anything. So I think it works different ways depending on your brain color and depending on who you're speaking to. Circumstances make a difference.
And I think we have to be mindful of that. I can't remember, someone shared earlier in the chat that some, just let friends go who aren't really talking to you. But do we know what's going on with them? So making relationships a priority. I know with my students, some of them come to student council or book club and are craving that, personal connection. So just continue to be intentional, but also think about, I love the framework that you've introduced to us, Sheila, because you're allowing us to think about how different people respond and react differently based on how their brain works. And sometimes when it doesn't match with how your brain works, we might interpret it differently. So,
right. And I always say to people, it's an explanation of your feelings and your thoughts and your attributes and abilities, but it is not an excuse for inappropriate behavior. You just can't be that way because you're orange and you're just going to hang up and not text any longer. You're off of the chat. It's not an excuse to sometimes for people that are very rude. So just remember, it's an explanation for people's behaviors, their thoughts, and their feelings, and how it relates to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I can't thank you, Sheila, enough, and our student panelists and all of the viewers today who participated in the conversation. It's a really important conversation right now, especially as we come up to the holiday season. We invite you to please keep the conversation going on Twitter and on Instagram. You can use the hashtag GlobalEdStudentChat. It's been going on the ticker the whole time. We also have a Flipgrid now. We recognize that there are different time zones and people who want to contribute to the conversation who aren't necessarily available at this time. So we do invite you to take a look on social media for the Flipgrid information. Watch for details about next month's chat, which will also be posted on our website the first of the month. Our next month's topic is motivation and goal setting, and it will take place on January 12th. Please note, we're also recruiting members for our social media ambassador team. Our friend who's not here, Erin Kim, is leading the charge on that. Please DM us for more information about how to be a part of our ambassador program. Have an amazing day. Thank you again for the conversation. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you.
Take care.